Panelists, welcome to the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance webinar about IRA, BIL, and other funding to accelerate the equitable transition. My name is Laura-Jean Davignon. I'm with the Interstate Renewable Energy Council. I'm joined by my colleague, Michelle Barrett, and Dr. Janelle Hills will be joining us. She has just lost power in Houston, Texas, so hopefully the utility will get her back up and running shortly, and she'll join us in a bit. Also joined by Dr. Deb Rowe from the National Council for Workforce Education. They are the co-conveners of this alliance, and we're very glad to have them, and also our funders with Bank of America, I believe, are in attendance here today as well. So very excited to have this program for you. We're going to introduce our panelists in just a moment. We're so fortunate to have some of the folks who are instrumental in dispersing some of the funding, as well as some folks who will give us a high-level overview of what is coming with this funding. And I promise that we will spell out those acronyms for you in just a moment. I think we'll be hearing those a lot. So I know we have a lot of folks, Alliance members returning today. Next slide, please. But if you are new to our convenings, you are joining a group that has been joining together for a year. We are a cross-sector effort uniting all clean energy workforce stakeholders. We are over 500 organizations strong as we sit here today, and that is growing day by day. We have some new organizations participating today. Welcome. Our prime or our guiding goals, our mission is to accelerate the development of a diverse and highly skilled workforce. We want to foster more effective and inclusive recruitment, training, education, and job placement efforts. So that's the Alliance. Now we would like to hear from you. For those who have been with us before, you know the drill. Please drop your name and organization in the chat. We want to see who's joining us from around the country. We've got 170 of you and growing. We had about 400 register today. We expect a couple hundred of you to join us live. We will be hosting a recording of this webinar on the IREC website for your viewing later, or if you have colleagues that were busy in another meeting today. So welcome NCAP, welcome Weatherization folks. Welcome, Kansas City. So keep the intros coming. Hello to Grid and all our partners around the country. So glad to have you today. Next slide, please. Okay, and then we'll go to the next slide while folks are continuing their introductions. So on the agenda today, our primary goal is to give everyone an overview. Jason Walsh with Blue Green Alliance will be giving us a high-level overview of the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. IRA and BIL. We want to hear a little bit about the legislation and the workforce provisions, but even more importantly, how are we going to meet this challenge? How are we going to meet those labor requirements? How are we going to ensure the quality jobs that IRA is trying to lay the groundwork for? Where's the funding? How do we obtain it? How can we get started collaborating with our state, federal, and other agencies, as well as potentially other funding sources? So our panelists do have some prepared remarks, but we know the value of these convenings is the discussion and interaction. So we will move pretty quickly into some group discussion amongst our expert panelists, and we will include you. We will have your Q&A. Please put that in the chat. You can start that anytime you like. We will be monitoring that. We will be sharing, as always, information, links, RFIs, things that you want to respond to throughout this program. So in addition to the recording, we will provide you with the slides after the event today. And we do have a few important Alliance events, including an update on the publication of the report out of our first year, yay, later today. So please hang with us until 3:30 Eastern if you're able. Okay, next slide, please. So with that, we are going to be silent and listen to our experts. Thank you, Jason Walsh with the Blue Green Alliance, who will cue things up with an overview of the legislation and some ideas on getting started to meet these challenges. Thank you so much to Vanetta Armstrong, who is with the Division of Workforce Operations and Investments, DWOI, for the DOL, Department of Labor, ETA, the Employment and Training Administration. Thank you so much. Mary McPherson, also known as Shoemaker to us who have been in this gig a while, Office of State and Community Energy Programs. That's a relatively new office for DOE. We are going to be hearing from Mary about that today at US DOE Department of Energy. And Tagwongo Obomsawin with the State of Maine Governor's Energy Office. Our colleagues in the state of Maine have kind of been leading the charge with starting to disperse some of this funding, the clean energy funding in their state. And Tagwongo will be sharing some outcomes as well as some tips for you to get started with your state energy offices. So without further ado, please keep the introductions coming. Please keep us posted if there's any way we may help you or support you in the chat, but most importantly, keep the questions coming. Now we're going to go to the next slide and Jason Walsh, and Jason will prompt his further slide transitions. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, LJ. I will try to remember to prompt, and I will try to cover a lot of ground here in 10 minutes or less. So apologies in advance for talking far too quickly. Okay, the IRA and the bill, two major pieces of federal legislation passed in the 117th Congress. What does this mean for workforce development? Next slide, please. Not answering that question yet. Here's just a little bit of context on my organization. The Blue-Green Alliance is a coalition of some of the country's largest labor unions and environmental groups. We were founded by our two original odd bed fellows back in 2006, the Steelworkers Union and the Sierra Club. We now have 14 partners who collectively represent about 16 million members and supporters. Our guiding principle is a belief that we shouldn't have to choose between good jobs and a clean environment. We can and must have both. And we did a lot of work on both of these pieces of legislation on policy provisions that seek to embody that principle. Next slide. Okay, bipartisan infrastructure law. This will be a refresher to many of you. It is, well, formerly known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, $1.2 trillion of investment in repairing and modernizing the nation's infrastructure. It was passed and signed into law in 2021. It represents the largest federal investment ever in a number of areas, in public transit, in passenger rail, in clean drinking water and wastewater infrastructure, in transmission, in a range of other modes of infrastructure, particularly in the transportation and energy sectors. Next slide, please. The Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed and signed into law last year after several near-death experiences, includes a number of sections that frankly have very little to do with reducing inflation, but such is the branding of major bills in Congress. So it includes major tax and healthcare legislation. I won't be talking about those. I will be talking about the biggest investment in climate action that our country, actually, I think any country has ever passed legislatively, a total of $365 billion in climate and energy and environmental protection and environmental justice, funneled through roughly 100, give or take a couple new and existing federal programs. It will do a lot of things, including reduce our carbon emissions by 2030 by 42% from a 2005 baseline. But it will mostly do that through deploying clean energy technologies in a really unprecedented way. So for example, best estimates are that the deployment of solar and wind, just two of those technologies, will increase by 4x every year over the next decade plus, right? Just to give you a sense of speed and scale. It will also make investments in building up domestic manufacturing supply chains for renewable energy and electric vehicle technologies. In fact, we think the legislation gives us the opportunity to reshore and revitalize American manufacturing after decades of decline and policy neglect. And it includes a number of provisions meant to secure high quality jobs, which I will talk about here in a moment. Next slide, please. BGA has produced user guides to both pieces of legislation, which attempt to summarize in plain English what we consider to be the most important investments in both, and how this funding can be used to deliver on the equity, jobs, and justice potential of these bills. You will find, if you look closely, we'll put a chat to our user guide resource center here in the presentation. I'd encourage anyone who is interested to download these user guides and read them and use them. That is what they are for. The bullets on this slide reflect how we categorize in those user guides the spending in each bill. So for the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, note the transportation and water funding at the top of that list. Right-hand side, IRA, see the clean energy funding at the top, much of which flows through tax incentives. Lots of manufacturing there. A number of you, I think, will be interested in the buildings funding. Biggest ticket items there are also through the tax code, but not only through the tax code. Let's go to the next slide, please. Jobs potential of both bills is enormous. So for the Inflation Reduction Act, which is what this slide is about, we commissioned analysis from the Political Economy Research Institute at UMass Amherst, which found that the IRA's investments will create more than 9 million jobs over the next decade, average of nearly 1 million jobs each year once we get rolling. You can see how this job creation breaks out by policy area in the table. The analysis doesn't break out job creation by economic sector, but if it did, you would see very big numbers in the construction, manufacturing, and utility sectors in particular. Next slide, please. There are workforce provisions in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the IRA, but they are few and far between. In fact, you could count them on two hands. These are important programs. I don't want to dismiss them, but as you'll see here from this list, that they are scattershot across agencies, relatively small, at least compared to the level of investment in physical capital. Here's a list of bipartisan infrastructure law programs. You'll see with some of these that workforce training is an eligible use rather than a focus, which I think is important to keep in mind. And you'll see that as well for the IRA programs on the next slide, please. Same dynamic holds true. Different funding pots. Some of the funds can be used for workforce development. And here you see DOE programs, EPA programs. I'd point out the environmental and climate justice block grants in particular, which is one of the bigger pots there. Again, it's an eligible use of funds. It's not the exclusive focus. But therein, I think, lies our challenge. And let me just put it out there because I think it's something that's worth talking about on this panel, right? The fundamental challenge as we see it is that with the passage of BIL and IRA, so just to be clear, that's roughly $1.5 trillion of investments in infrastructure and clean energy deployment over the next decade. It's going to create millions of jobs, but that is not accompanied by corollary human capital investments, right, in the education and training of workers, whether they are new workers, incumbent workers, or dislocated workers. That's a disconnect that matters in particular because much of the job creation that flows from these investments will be in sectors where the workforce is disproportionately white, male, and aging. So two big dangers as we see them, to kind of state the obvious. One, that we won't be able to fully achieve the equity promise of this legislation and specifically be able to develop pathways out of poverty, out of precarious employment for workers, and creating ultimately a workforce in a number of these sectors that actually looks like America. And two, that employers won't be able to find qualified and skilled workers, which might undermine the deployment and climate and energy and economic goals of this legislation. Next slide, please. I do want to talk about an area in the IRA where I think we leverage a very valuable workforce system to realize the goals of this legislation. So I do want to talk about this a little bit. So I mentioned clean energy tax credits. This covers a range of clean energy technologies over the 10-year span of these tax credits. They are coupled for the first time ever with well-proved labor standards that are designed to protect job quality in the construction industry and to skill up its workforce. There are two specifically, some of these you may be familiar with. Prevailing wage requirements, right, which requires that the recipient of the credit, which is often the contractor or the project developer, pays prevailing wages in that local labor market as determined by DOL wage surveys during the construction of that qualifying project, and registered apprenticeship programs, which require the recipient of the tax credit to ensure that qualified apprentices from registered apprenticeship programs perform a certain percentage of total job hours on the project. It's a scale that starts at 10% of work hours and then goes up to 15%. There are complications to this. Developers could actually just get a base rate, but the full tax credit is 5 times the size of the base tax credit. So there will be a strong incentive for recipients of the tax credit to use the whole thing and meet these standards. There is a size threshold on the standards. They only apply to projects that are in the energy sector that are 1 megawatt or bigger. So for example, they would apply to a utility scale solar farm that's being installed, but not to a rooftop solar project on somebody's home. I think I will stop there. That's my last slide, and I'm hoping we can get into a bunch of this when we get to Q&A. Thanks.
For sure. Thank you so much, Jason. And totally echo Amy's appreciation for learning more about BGA. We are thrilled to have Blue Green Alliance as members of this other alliance, and for this insight, Jason. Really, thank you for acknowledging the elephant in the room. Part of the raison d'etre for this alliance is the disconnect that we saw between the scaling needed and the resources available to do the job, including our own development of workforce infrastructure and the resources we need to support the scaling. So I think our goal for today is to ensure that everyone on this convening and by extension their networks are aware of what funding is out there, even if we know it's not sufficient. So what's in these acts, what's already available in the workforce system and other sources through EDA and others, because clean energy, we're the new kids on the block still, guys. We aren't necessarily fully tapping the resources available to us. So let's start there. But since we hope there will be some further significant investments in this workforce development that is needed to save our planet, the Alliance will be releasing some information for funders, program designers, and others next month that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. Came from all of you. This was crowdsourced information to help those funders and program designers invest their resources where they will be most impactful. So with that, we are going to pass the baton to Vanetta Armstrong with DOL. Vanetta, take it away. Thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. Glad that I can be part of this great panel. Good afternoon, everyone. And it's great to see we got such a great turnout for some really good information. So what is registered apprenticeship? I don't like to go on verbatim per each one of the PowerPoint slides, but just to give you some insight. Since the start of the Biden administration, Department of Labor has invested over $330 million in federal funding to support efforts to expand, modernize, and diversify registered apprenticeships and the pathways into those proven earn and learn programs for all American workers, including those who have been historically underrepresented and underserved in apprenticeship. And so the question is, what is apprenticeship? Registered apprenticeship is an industry-driven, high-quality career pathway where employers can develop and prepare their future workforce, and individuals can obtain paid work experience, receive progressive wage increases, classroom instruction, and a portable, nationally recognized credentialed program that vets the best of the best. Registered apprenticeship enables and energizes more employers to participate and provide them access to a larger talent pool that has been trained for entry level to management positions, thereby meeting industry demands and reducing unemployment rates across the country. Next slide. We have several active apprenticeship investments, as previously mentioned, 330 million and counting. Just to give you a snapshot of where it all began and where we are today, we have several program investments. From the most recent are Building America grants, the ABA grants, 170 million. And it's just continuing to flow. Additional funding sources for apprenticeship also includes our partnerships and our sister agencies and grant programs, women in apprenticeships, One Workforce grant programs, rural healthcare, apprenticeship closing the skills gap, and the H-1B1 scaling apprenticeship through sector-based strategies grants. Next slide. Apprenticeship funding access resources. Instead, again, reading verbatim, please write down, we have such a great website. It is apprenticeship.gov. Again, apprenticeship.gov. It is the go-to for everything apprenticeship from wherever you are. If you are a gig worker trying to explore what's my next career move, to a prospective employer who says, I need to staff up. It's a great resource. It has great toolkits and other resources to help you really dive into not just what apprenticeship you think it is, but it'll give you great insight on what it actually is. Key elements I want you to keep in mind with a registered apprenticeship program is industry-led, it's a paid job, structured on the job learning and mentorship, supplemental education, diversity, quality and safety, and credentials. We expand and we don't just keep it in-house. We always try to fine tune what else can we expand to get RAPs recognized. We have great collaborations and partnerships, including with this great panel today. But one of the great programs that we have under our umbrella which is our registered RATA centers. They are specifically targeted to help you tool up, get established, and help you navigate to get your registered apprenticeships off the ground. Again, their information, we have 4 RATA centers, is available on apprenticeship.gov. Next slide. Apprenticeship funding, accessing resources, registered apprenticeship industry intermediaries. So when you think about our investments division, we have one side that's grants, and then which are funding opportunity announcements and NOFOs, notice of funding opportunities. And then we have contracts. On the contract side, we have industry intermediaries. Those are contracts that satisfy multiple sectors to help organizations create and expand registered apprenticeships. So we have 2 funding streams that really, if you are not looking to apply for a grant, you can say, well, let's explore a contract. Possibly we can build that partnership or get connected with industry intermediaries. Just to give you an idea, if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see, for example, the contractor and specifically what industry. So if you are interested in, let's say, supply chain, you can reach out to the National Institute for Innovation and Technology. When I tell you we're always on what's the next big trend, what is the next big occupation, which one needs, more staffing up. The wonderful thing about Department of Labor, we're always looking at those trends, whether that's through data analysis, whether that's from hearing from our stakeholders or the public at large. We're trying to make sure that we stay ahead of the curve. As previously mentioned, we know that COVID had upturned so much of our society and our marketability, but we are determined to get back. And so it's really nice to see that it is not just business as usual, but elevating business. Next slide. Apprenticeship funding, very proud of our youth registered apprenticeship intermediaries. One of the wonderful things about all of our programs, it's not just targeted to one demographic. I always say that it's really great to start early. We are really starting to do more investments early on, whether at the high school setting or for those that are just as involved, whether, at-risk youth or youth trying to explore the next step. I can only speak for myself. When I was leaving high school, my mom just said, have a plan, ma'am. And I didn't have one. You're in this great cocoon for all those years, being in school. And then when you have that epiphany moment, it's time to grow up. What's my next steps? So I really wish at the time when I was trying to figure out me and what it was that I had access to apprenticeship. But again, the youth registered apprenticeship intermediaries through a partnership with Department of Labor. These intermediaries assist educational institutions, employers, industry associations, joint labor management organizations, states, grantees, and other organizations to launch in and out of school youth apprenticeship programs. We currently have 4 youth apprenticeship intermediaries across multiple sectors that helps organize, create, and expand youth apprenticeship. That is so important because we know a lot of our nonprofits are working right in the communities, whether it's with youth, whether it's with seniors, whether it's with generation X, Y, and Z. It's nice to be able to capture and have services accessible for everyone. So again, in the left-hand side, you'll see the contractor and what their industry is. Next slide. Apprenticeship funding, again, I mentioned it earlier, very proud of our 4 registered technical assistance centers of excellence. Each one of them have a concentration. The Center for Diversity and Inclusion, that's Jobs for the Future. Our Center for Apprenticeship, Occupation and Standards, that's the Urban Institute. Data and Performance and Best Practices Center, the Council for State Governments, and finally, the Center for Strategic Partnerships and System Alliance, SAFO Partners. None of this costs any money. It's just a great bucket of great resources that I encourage everyone to tap into. Next slide. Apprenticeship funding, again, these are some also helpful resources and tools. All this, again, apprenticeship.gov is available. The apprenticeship job finder, real time, up to the minute, data analysis. Apprenticeship partner finder, how to connect. Who are your partners? You'd be surprised that if we're in one geographical area, how that partnership can expand. I think one of the things that we did learn from this COVID storm is that we had to pivot and work differently. And so to be able to have partnerships, say in Alaska, when we are in Staten Island is a wonderful thing. And then finally, Apprenticeship Standards Builder is making sure that you have all the tools you need so you have that great accreditation. It's not like we help assist you and then off you go. It's a continuous support system to reskill, retool, keep on invigorating and expanding your programs. That is what we're here for. Next slide. And I will stop at that. If you have any questions, we will leave it for the Q&A, but I'm so glad that I am able to talk about something I'm very passionate about, and I will pass it on to my next panel colleague. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanetta. I really appreciate those comments. And we're getting a shout out about the redesign of apprenticeship.gov. So nice job on that. I am going to ask one of the questions that came in through while you were speaking, since you and I were chatting about this earlier, Vanetta. Ann Weisberg, who's a longtime Alliance member, or as long as any, we're a year old, asked if there is a youth intermediary for clean energy apprenticeships. And I know I had that same question. So how does clean energy fit within that framework that you showed that includes construction, et cetera?
Okay, good question. At present, because we recently had to mine some data as we were preparing for this presentation. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier is sort of think about when you have a college degree, you have your major and your minor. So we have several grant programs that technically has green energy as a minor. However, I mentioned we're staying ahead of the trend. We know that this is a high demand field and it's growing and it's expanding very rapidly. So we are already planning, when we look at our future funding forecast, that is going to be incorporated. What I will say to you, which I'm not at liberty to share in great detail, but we do have some great funding opportunities very soon on the horizon. So please continue to check in at apprenticeship.gov, grants.gov, and see what's on the horizon. I always encourage everyone, if you're not already registered, make sure you're on grants.gov, and you can get alerts sent to you that will give you an update on DOL just published the current funding opportunity announcements, staying ahead of it. I've been on both sides as a grant management specialist, now as a director. I always believe in diversifying my funding sources. So you definitely want to tap in. This is a great time to be on both sides as a grantor or a grantee.
Can I quickly speak to that question, LJ? I mean, look,
please.
I think it's a great question. I think we actually have to build out these intermediaries for clean energy sectors. I think that's the challenge. This is the first time through federal policy that we have leveraged the registrar's apprenticeship program system, right? Which is a significant one. Just the unionized building trades and their signatory contractors alone run 600 training centers across the country. But they're also a network, as I think many people on this call know, maybe some of you work for these organizations, of apprenticeship readiness programs, pre-apprenticeship programs. Often those are not funded by the joint partnership funds, right? And so we often have to find some public dollars for that. But I think one of the real challenges for us is to expand the aperture of the beginning of that pipeline to bring more folks into these crafts, working on clean energy technologies and the deployment of those technologies, and fundamentally diversifying the construction workforce while we do it.
Hear, hear. Thanks, Jason and Vanetta. There were a number of questions. We didn't realize that we had placed this next slide in a very good location. Want to address a couple of the threads that we've got running in the chat right now. One is just folks calling out, again, another elephant in the room. We are not where we would have liked to have been with apprenticeship program development for the sector, facing some of the challenges in the IRA, and also just our very, very sincere desire to have these jobs be quality jobs. And that's a group effort. That's not the effort of one employer to make a solar job or an energy efficiency job high quality. That's on all of us to make that happen. And that's why we talk so much about the just transition. So want to call out two things. One, yes, we need more work around the area of apprenticeships, but the low-hanging fruit and where IREC sees the industry going first, others may have opinions or thoughts on this, and we definitely should discuss those in the group discussion, is to fully leverage, again, back to this theme of leveraging the resources already available to us. There are pathways out there, electrical, weatherization technician, laborer, et cetera, that relate to our job categories. In the end, a lot of our jobs are construction jobs. They are electrical jobs, et cetera. We know that there are specialized skills and needs that are particular and specific to clean energy, but we have not done all the work that we could do to fully leverage the existing union and non-union pathways to serve clean energy. That we think is step one. Yes, there are not a lot of quote unquote apprenticeable occupations. There's a lot of chat about DOL not recognizing solar installer as a job. That's not 100% accurate. That what is not recognized is that occupation as an apprenticeable occupation, which would be a step needed to have a just solar installer focused apprenticeship pathway. But again, we see the first step as being leveraging the pathways that are out there in partnership with our colleagues with organized labor. And there are also non-labor options that also offer quality jobs. So through the Solar Ready Vets Network, Richard Lawrence, Megan Howes, and others are working with the Solar Energy Industries Associations and a large group of stakeholders from clean energy and without, on information and sharing resources related to just what we described, navigating registered apprenticeship options for already approved occupations that apply to our work. Our next steps are to collaborate with the union and non-union folks to build on this experience that we have with workforce development to extend that to apprenticeship pathways. We know that there are many pathways into clean energy, and we don't necessarily have all the answers or the development for any of them, but apprenticeships are going to be critical to support this transition. More on that later. Want to acknowledge another thread that I know will come out in the discussion, and that is that we have a lot of CBOs in attendance today, and we really appreciate your time and support. Yes, applying for federal and state funds is very laborious. It's a big lift. This is something that is very much on the radar of our colleagues on the funder and program designer and implementation side. They want to hear from you. Mary has a specific opportunity for you to respond and say, DOE, this is what I need to get my program funded. And no, I can't do the 50,000 steps that I have to do now. Is there, can I have support? Can I have help? Is there a way that we can work with you that is accessible to us? So with that introduction, we're going to pass the baton. Let's go to the next slide, Michelle, to our next panelist, Mary McPherson with DOE, longtime Alliance member, even before the Alliance existed. Thank you, Mary, for being with us today.
Thanks, LJ. Can you hear me okay? Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary McPherson. I joined DOE in the fall and was previously working on workforce development at the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy. Today, I'm going to share with you about the 4 new energy efficiency workforce development programs funded through BIL and IRA, some of which Jason touched on. And I acknowledge the funding is not necessarily, I think, where a lot of folks might have advocated for it to be, but we're still hoping to design these programs and implement them to maximize the impact with the resources we do have. Next slide, please. So just to give some context on the Office of State and Community Energy Programs, SCEP, as we call it, was created recently to deliver $16 billion in programs funded through BIL and IRA. So we're working to really accelerate self-sustaining and community-driven clean energy projects that have a tangible impact on people's lives. We're providing technical and financial resources to state and local governments, community-based organizations, tribal entities, and their partners. And across this work, really working to prioritize the needs of low-income communities and disadvantaged communities, which I'll touch on a bit more in the following slides. Next slide, please. So this infographic kind of shows the scale of programs that DOE is managing, or that SCEP is managing specifically. The workforce programs I'm going to talk about are part of the $260 million in the turquoise bubble at the top left of the screen. But you can see that there are some other bubbles of funding that are much larger, like the $9 billion for home energy rebates and $3.5 billion for the weatherization assistance program. But we'll dig into the details now of that $260 million for workforce training. Next slide, please. Across the BIL funded programs that DOE is managing, we are requiring applicants to include community benefits plans in their materials. So this will include community benefit plans that are scored across 4 different categories. One is their creation of good paying jobs to make sure that we're attracting and retaining skilled labor in the clean energy workforce and allowing folks a free and fair chance to join a union. We're also prioritizing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility to make sure we're building wealth for workers and businesses who haven't historically had access to opportunities in this sector. We are working through these programs to meet the Justice 40 targets that are government-wide and sets a goal to steer 40% of the benefits of federal funding towards disadvantaged communities. And lastly, we'll be on the lookout for community and workforce agreements to make sure that applicants have engaged meaningfully with labor and with their communities to arrive at formal agreements that ensure projects are benefiting employers and employees alike. Next slide. These are the 4 programs I'll discuss in greater detail on the following slides. you can see that we're designing training programs that will prepare folks to deliver energy efficiency measures and electrification upgrades across building segments, from the residential and commercial sectors to the institutional sector. Next slide. So the largest of these programs is the state-based Home Energy Efficiency Contractor Training Program, funded through the IRA at $200 million. This program is geared towards state agencies and will help states train residential energy efficiency contractors, certify those contractors, and partner with nonprofits on those training and certification programs. Next slide. The second largest program is the Energy Auditor Training Program at $40 million, also for state agencies. And this will train folks to deliver energy audits in both commercial and residential buildings. Next slide. And I'll just pause there and acknowledge that I'm not providing many details on these programs because we're still very much figuring out what they should look like. And we're soliciting public comments over the next couple of days and have been for the past month and a half. So if you have thoughts, I would welcome them, and we'll provide details on how to submit your comments later in these slides. So the third program is the Building Training and Assessment Center program, or BTAC. That is $10 million for institutions of higher education. Many of you might be familiar with a longstanding DOE program called the Industrial Assessment Centers, or IACs, that trains people to do energy assessments in small and medium manufacturing facilities. This program, the BTAC program, is very similar, but is focused on institutional and commercial buildings, training people how to do energy audits and identify efficiency upgrades for those buildings. I'll note here that we published a notice of intent last month for the BTAC program and the Industrial Assessment Center program. So as part of that NOI, we've posted a teaming partners list that if anyone is interested in joining, I'd encourage you to take a look at this link here, also included in the QR code. Next slide. The last program I'll highlight is geared towards nonprofits, the Career Skills Training Program. This will be grants to nonprofits who partner with industry and labor organizations to deliver both classroom and on-the-job training around building energy efficiency technologies. We haven't defined yet specifically which energy efficiency technologies, and this program is quite flexible as to which buildings we're focusing on training people to work in. So if you have thoughts on that, I heard there's a lot of CBOs in the room right now. We'd love to hear how DOE can design this program to be more accessible for you, recognizing the limitations you face in your capacity to apply for these funds. Next slide, please. So the most important thing on this slide is in the yellow text box. We have a request for information that closes this Thursday at 5 p.m. That will inform all of the programs I just mentioned, except for the BTAC program, which is kind of moving forward separately. But the RFI includes a bunch of questions. I don't expect any one respondent to answer all of them. Even if you have thoughts on just one of those questions or something not in the RFI, we'd love to hear from you. I'll include on the next slide an email address through which we hope you'll send us your thoughts. But we really hope to work with you to train students and workers and build a diverse pipeline and make sure we're building on your existing successful workforce development programs, because we know we're not starting from scratch. And we know that this federal funding won't be enough to really transform the market. And we need to look to what y'all are already doing. Next slide. So here are some links. I will paste these into the chat once I'm done. And here's an email address as well. I'll put my personal email in the chat box too. This is the email for the RFI comments. But really appreciate your attention and looking forward to our discussion. That's all. Thanks, LJ.
Thanks, Mary. Just have a quick clarifying question from the floor on one of the specific programs before we moved on.
Sure.
And it just, someone just chatted and it popped out of my thing. Hold on. I believe, so what type of workforce does the state-based home energy efficiency contractor cover? I think that's largely focused on the like energy auditor and the retrofit technician. But there was a question about solar installation. I think that would fall in another bucket. Is that correct?
That's correct. These
Okay.
programs are all focused on energy efficiency and don't include solar. I know I saw a few folks from DOE's Solar Energy Technologies office who are in the room right now in the virtual room. So if those folks want to maybe paste a link in the chat to the latest CETO FOA that closed or is ongoing, that would be helpful. But these programs are just about retrofitting or replacing electrifying heating sources with a heat pump, or maybe weatherizing buildings, adding more insulation, or upgrading your electrical needs.
Great. Thank you, Mary. And yeah, if Sarah or any of the folks from CETO want to weigh in, we invite that. Shout out to Stacy. Thank you for sharing that information about the Justice 40 Accelerator community. That is great info. She did drop the link in the chat. And that is there for you. And we will share these all out after the session. And great, we're going to move on now and address any of the questions that we haven't yet addressed during the group discussion. We're going to pass the baton to Tagwongo to talk to us about what is up in the state of Maine and Tagwongo's suggestions for how we should be working with our states. As you can tell from Mary's presentation, not all of these funds are flowing direct from the feds. So there will be opportunities to kind of work in your backyard if you have a state-based or regional or local program. Take it away, Tagwongo.
Thank you so much. So great to hear from all my fellow panelists, and it's a real honor to be here with you all today and share what we're working on in Maine. My name is Tagwongo Obomsawin. I'm the Clean Energy Partnership Program Manager with the Maine Governor's Energy Office, which is our state energy office. I would love for you to take away 3 things from my presentation today. That Maine's clean energy workforce initiatives are being supported by new programs, climate policy, and technology adoption. That our programming is starting small. It requires foundational research and analysis, and stakeholder engagement should be and is going to be continuous, and that you can go much further when you partner with others. So next slide, please. So just zooming out a little bit, since 2019, Maine has had greenhouse gas reduction targets outlined in state law. We're pursuing a 45% reduction in carbon emissions below 1990 levels by 2030 and 80% below 1990 levels by 2050. Our Climate Council delivered the Climate Action Plan in 2020, which outlines numerous strategies to reduce emissions and establish metrics like installing 100,000 new heat pumps by 2025, allowing agencies to track states' progress towards decarbonization. Next slide, please. So in Maine, the bulk of our greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation, but it's also true that 60% of our households use heating oil in the winter at a high cost to Mainers, especially earlier this year when oil reached almost $6 per gallon delivered. So that's one of the very practical reasons why we've installed 82,000 new heat pumps in the state since 2019, and why the state has invested heavily in energy efficiency rebates and programming, some of which is supported by the Governor's Energy Office. Next slide, please. So our office was established within the executive department of the governor and is directly responsible to the governor, and tasked with activities related to state energy policies, planning and development. We work on a wide variety of energy issues and are responsible for providing policy leadership and technical assistance, energy programming, monitoring energy markets, and reporting on heating, fuel, and energy prices. All state energy offices are different, which is why industry associations like the National Association of State Energy Officials, or NASIO, can be a great resource or first stop for entities seeking to partner or just trying to figure out how your state's energy office even functions to begin with. When it comes to funding needs, our office has grown significantly over time, so how we fund our activities has changed too. And these are some of the sources that we utilize listed here and will continue and will increasingly utilize. The Clean Energy Partnership Program, which I'll talk about on the next slide, was funded by the American Rescue Plan Act, which funded the governor's main jobs and recovery plan. Next slide, please. So the Clean Energy Partnership was funded with $8 million from the main jobs and recovery plan, with $6.5 million going to the governor's energy office and $1.5 million to the Department of Labor. The Clean Energy Partnership includes a variety of initiatives supporting workforce development, innovation, and critically, the communication, outreach, and awareness building needed to support these activities as well. The partnership supports an ambitious goal of doubling our clean energy workforce to reach 30,000 workers by 2030, which is a lot smaller than the clean energy workforce in many other states. We aim to do this by preparing and expanding Maine's clean energy workforce, as well as supporting the innovation of clean tech products and services. And to help guide the program activities, we've convened an advisory group to provide information and feedback as we implement our initiatives and design them. So this includes monitoring progress and providing really transparent feedback on any adjustments needed and things we should consider for future programming. I'm sure you all can appreciate that $6.5 million in the grand scheme of things is not a lot of money, but it certainly sounds like a lot to me. And it's really great to be starting small with these initiatives and making funds available for pilot programs that can help lay the groundwork for continued efforts into the future. Next slide, please. So if you are thinking about how to get started, any successful program requires foundational research and analysis, and stakeholder engagement should, of course, start very early and then be continuous. So if you are a small state like Maine, or if you don't know where to start or what your clean energy industry even looks like, this can be a great first step, starting with that research and analysis. So what we did was engage a consultant to first profile our clean energy industry and engage businesses around their COVID-19 response, and then build upon that industry report to engage stakeholders around their specific workforce challenges and define the training and education landscape, and then profile current and potential clean energy workers. We also commissioned another report separate related to the Maine Offshore Wind Initiative that looks at the offshore wind talent analysis in Maine. So all of these efforts were really helpful in producing findings and recommendations and strategies that are informing our programming efforts and in sourcing creative solutions directly from stakeholders, which is always extremely, extremely helpful. Next slide, please. So again, you can go a lot further when you partner with others, either rolling up your sleeves yourselves or getting out of the way so that others can get the good work done. So the Governor's Energy Office made $2.9 million available and awarded $2.5 million in funding to support clean energy workforce development. And that included everything from standing up new training programs to developing curriculum. We tried to leave it open-ended to get a wide response. So we're happy that we got 9 entities awarded under that pot of funds, which include labor unions, community colleges and universities, industry associations, community action agencies, and employers. We're really excited about how these efforts might leverage the workforce development infrastructure already in place and then be able to grow as our office may access additional funding from the BIL and IRA. With these initiatives, we should see the first registered apprenticeship programs implemented to support weatherization and energy efficiency workers in our state. We'll see expanded pre-apprenticeships that get more high schoolers prepared for careers in construction and trades, and the development of a new undergraduate concentration in offshore wind engineering, just to name a few. And critically, these projects are intentionally focused on removing barriers to participation and increasing diversity and representation in the clean energy workforce. That's something that we specifically asked entities to respond to during our RFP evaluation and selection process. And we were happy to say that we got really creative and sector-specific responses as to how they would accomplish that. Next slide, please. Happy to share one final example of another agency's workforce development initiatives that are supporting the clean energy industry, and that's our Maine Department of Labor via their registered apprenticeship programming. So earlier this year, the Department of Labor awarded $12.3 million to expand the Maine apprenticeship program, which included, as I mentioned earlier, $1.5 million from the Clean Energy Partnership to specifically support clean energy apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs. So their grantees are increasing exposure to clean energy careers by creating pre-apprenticeship programs, developing multi-craft core curriculum and training for construction and trades, and creating new apprenticeship programs for solar careers not related to installation, including for customer service representatives, technical sales specialists, operations managers, and PV design specialists. And in this particular case, these pathways are expanding upon this employer's existing electrical apprenticeship program that's being used to train and license solar installers. So all this to say, it's really great that we have a terrific partner in our Maine Department of Labor. With our combined programming, we're able to support and expand programs specifically focused on clean energy and related occupations and skilled trades with a much more holistic understanding of industry needs and a more coordinated approach than if we both were doing it alone. So that's it from me. And if you want to learn more, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Tagwongo. Let's do a round of applause virtually for our panel. We are going to pause screen sharing for just a bit to have some discussion items to allow our panelists to see each other. So Michelle, if you would stop your screen sharing. Couple clarifying questions for Tagwongo. One, thank you so much for the applause, everyone. Number one, just can you share any insights? We do have some Mainers here and some folks that were involved with Revision Energy here on the call, but obviously I think we've got a lot of states represented today. Any thoughts you have just from where you sit on how, if our attendees are not currently interfacing with or interacting with or funded by their state energy office, because there are folks on here that already are, how would you suggest they get started in reaching out and understanding what state level funding is available through the energy office specifically?
Great. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, NASDO has a lot of terrific resources that can help you understand whether your state energy office even kind of typically offers funding opportunities. And I mean, we're all public servants, so we take calls, we answer them. You can typically find our emails on our websites, and at least speaking from the Maine Governor's Energy Office perspective, we do take great care to answer calls from constituents and would be happy to hear from anyone in Maine, and kind of if you're looking at ways to engage your state energy offices outside of Maine as well.
Thank you. Had a specific question about anyone's aware of plans in California. I've heard a couple things, Alex, but if others are aware of startup there on dispersing some of these funds, please share it in the chat. Tagwongo, Brent from Service Year Alliance was asking how you plan to collaborate with the Maine Climate Corps that has newly formed up there, if you have any comments about that.
Yes. So we are really excited about the award by the Maine Commission on Community Service to Down East Community Partners to stand up a Climate Corps program that's specifically focused on energy efficiency education and outreach. And actually, funnily enough, this specific organization also is awarded funding under the Clean Energy Partnership. So we will be collaborating. This is an extension and an expansion of the activities that are funded by the Clean Energy Partnership. So, you know, we're getting the same people in the room. We're figuring out what's not covered by one specific funding source and figuring out ways to stretch dollars even further.
Thank you. And thank you, Mary, because that was my next question. NASIO does have a resource on their website to let you know where your state, who your state energy office is, so you know who to reach out to if you don't have a predetermined relationship. Another resource that Tagwongo called out that you absolutely should be tapping and reaching out to if you haven't done so already is your state DOL, your Department of Labor, or your local workforce development board. There is a whole network of folks focused on funding and supporting training for the workforce in your community. And if you're not yet talking to them, I will say your experience may depend on where you sit, but there are many, many, many wonderful workforce development boards out there doing excellent work, including in the clean energy sector. And we don't want to ignore those resources. And I'm sure Vanetta can answer more detailed questions than I can about those. So we have a couple general discussion questions for our panel. We'll continue to take your questions in the chat, so keep those coming. We've been trying to answer some as we go and capture others as we move forward here. So a thread that's been in the chat, and we also thought about beforehand for any of our panelists to respond to, what are your ideas? And we've already heard a couple, to leverage funding specifically to increase workforce diversity and support of disadvantaged communities. Obviously, a lot of the federal funding we're seeing through IRA is purposely structured to accomplish that. But other thoughts or comments about how that can be facilitated, especially as it relates to the partnerships we need in local communities.
So while the panelists are thinking about what they want to say, I just want to announce that we are going to have an event in March with the Alliance that's focused specifically on partnerships. It's key, right? We don't want to stretch those employers too far to sit on multiple advisory committees, and we need the information out to the education, the trainers, and the CBOs. So let's collaborate together, and we'll be stronger if we bring in all the stakeholders together. So watch out for that date in March and join us for that.
One thing I'm thinking about, oh, LJ, were you going to respond to that?
Nope, you go ahead.
In making sure that DOE funded workforce development programs work for disadvantaged community members is making sure we're providing support wraparound services for participants in those trainings, and wherever possible, helping those folks earn and learn, and provide transportation or childcare, and making sure we build that flexibility in for funding recipients. It's still very much coming together, but that's something in the back of my mind.
Let me flag that there are still states that have not fully spent their American Rescue Plan funding. And in particular, the fiscal recovery fund within that went to state and local governments. And one of the eligible uses for that is for a set of economic and workforce development activities, particularly workforce development activities that get at racial equity. So I would encourage folks to do a little bit of homework on whether your state has actually utilized all of your funding. A number of southern states in particular have not spent all of their money, but it's not just southern states. And that is, I think, a source of some badly needed public dollars.
Since you mentioned the state level, I have a question that I cannot answer. Maybe our panelists can. Tracy in Texas was asking if it's incumbent on the state legislatures to accept this federal flow through money for these energy efficiency training programs, et cetera, or is that on autopilot, or does something need to happen there? I mean, I know obviously the implementation does.
I don't believe it will be incumbent on state legislatures to accept the funding. My understanding is that it'll go straight to the executive agencies, likely state energy offices. But I don't think legislatures will be involved. That's my gut instinct, not an official final answer. I don't know if Jason.
It will be a political knife fight in a few states. We're already seeing some efforts. So Wisconsin's an example where the Republican legislature is trying to take control from the governor, who's a Democrat, of IRA funding that flows through the state. So we could see that happen in other places.
Thank you. Thanks, folks. And just, for the record, our intent is not to criticize or bash folks, but, this is just the reality of what we're facing in this implementation. And we want to be really transparent, as we always have been with the Alliance. And along those lines, another elephant in the room, I just alluded to, Vanetta, don't want to put you in a politically tricky situation, but just any thoughts for those areas that don't have a strong workforce development board and how they can reach out to state. I'm assuming they should reach out to their state DOL, or how should they work within those confines? Because obviously we know that through the eligible training provider list and other mechanisms, it can be very challenging if you don't have a strong board.
Right. I just think about the fact that some of the best work comes through grassroots organizations, knowing your networks, finding out from one of the things that we're looking at, and I'm going to jump back to the DEIA question. When we look at non-traditional occupations where there's underrepresentation of women, people with physical limitations, we are really trying to tap into those markets and get those people and those groups a seat at the table. Fast forward, most of the great work that's done is with small organizations that are right in the middle of the community that knows the pulse and what's happening. So I strongly encourage knowing your local legislators, knowing, who to talk to, whether that's Chamber of Commerce. There's a lot of small rural communities that are doing real big city things. So I think it's very important to talk to your legislators, your state officials, find out who do you talk to, and not to just tout apprenticeship.gov, but it has great connections and links to who the point of contact might be. And that might be a good starting point to see who to reach out to in your respective states.
Great. That's great insight. Deb let me know that she is also in a tenuous internet setting today. We have a raft of those issues today. I don't know if folks have noticed that we've been having some technical difficulties throughout. Deb, I'm going to let you share the outreach that you're doing for workforce development folks now rather than later, and then we'll move on to further Q&A.
Great. Thank you very much. I did want to mention, how this panel is telling you contact this and contact this. So I used to own a solar company and an energy efficiency, energy management firm. I know how hard it is to be running a business or a training organization and still have to do all this extra outreach stuff. Once again, that's why it makes sense to form a partnership. In Detroit, we had the Detroit Green Skills Alliance. We brought together the government and the companies and the nonprofits and the educational organizations so that then we could approach and get more information as a group. And it saved us time. And it was also more effective for those we were reaching out to. So once again, this alliance holding that partnership meeting in March, but just start thinking about those partnerships where we can build, it's not the time to go territorial. We got to get this work done. We got to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and we got to go at a fast pace. So let's collaborate for those outcomes. So my announcement is, talking about collaborating, is we have a national group, which is the group that was educating the members of Congress, one of the groups that really helped to get these bills passed. And now they need the success stories of clean jobs that have been created so they can go back to the members of Congress, particularly the tenuous members of Congress, to say, thank you, look at what you have done, so that we will continue to have the kind of regulations and legislation we need. So right now, we're going to drop into the chat. Evie's going to drop into the chat a link. And that link is to a form where just tell us stories that you have. You can share a lot of them or just share one. We need the stories of, oh, this person got a clean energy job, because those are the stories that we tell when we talk to the decision makers that will keep this support going. So I know you're really busy and I'm asking you to do something else, but we really would appreciate your input to that. And thank you.
Thanks, Deb. Evie and I both dropped that link if anyone's able to share a success story. Because yeah, I know we are all so overburdened with our core occupations, but if we aren't tooting our own horn, guess what? We're not getting funded. So speaking of funding, back to a question for Mary, which is a question I have as well. What are your thoughts or insight on timing of when we can see some of these programs go live at the state level? They're specifically calling out the home energy efficiency contractor training, BTAC. I know there's probably at all different phases of development at the state level, but can you offer any insight?
I can't offer that much insight on that front. We're hoping to issue at least the first round of funding opportunity announcements for these programs at some point this year, hopefully sooner rather than later, but at risk of overpromising, I can't get more specific than that. But I recognize folks are eager to get this money, and we're working to get it out the door as soon as possible.
Great. We have some feedback from folks, and again, we don't have all the answers here, and some of this is still in development, but if anyone has any insight, again, the states are in varying levels of evolution with how they are getting out public information about this. Again, we've mentioned some of the likely agencies that could be dispersing these funds: the State Energy Office, Department of Labor. Our panelists can chime in with other ideas for state agencies that are the likely purse string holders, I guess, because we're hearing some frustration in the chat about just there not being a lot of information available yet. What is the website to check and apply for funds? It depends. Let's definitely share the DOL and DOE resources in terms of, where you look for FOAs, et cetera, while we're on. Yes, we will share these links. I know there's a lot of links being shared out. So we will make sure we collect those for you as we have been doing. And want to offer our panelists another go round on a high level question. Again, coming back to everything we're discussing here, understanding that people have limited time, attention, resources to go after this. What is your top tip? I'll offer mine too as we go here on how folks, especially at the community level, although we have all types on this call today, we have national, state, regional, and local entities on this call. Where would you suggest they get their first step in identifying funding to pursue, which I think would be what you would want to do first, obviously focused on your mission and what it is you do. You probably want to stick with the things that you already have developed skills in, whether it's training development, wraparound services for members of your community, other supportive workers, employer outreach and support. We want you leveraging your talents to do the best work you can under this funding. But panelists, where can people get started? What is your top line thought?
I would say, what is your mission? What is the occupation? Is it, when I think about apprenticeship, if you've never had a registered apprenticeship program and you just want to explore it a little bit more, I would say reach out to our RATA Centers of Excellence. They'll be able to help you kind of do an assessment and give you more insight of exactly what you're looking for. There's a pre-apprenticeship, and then there's our apprenticeship. So you can find out early on based on just that assessment on pre-apprenticeship, and they can tell you, help guide you and figure out what your niche is. Is it in demand? Sometimes we have this one vision, but then come to find out it has broader implications. You may have to expand that scope of exactly what field you want to get into. So I would definitely say, do your homework, find out a little bit more, but at the very beginning, find out what your mission is, what you want to accomplish, and how's the best way to get there. There is a lot of great resources out there, not just Department of Labor, but collectively. And this is a wonderful time that with all the technology in front of us, all we have to do is kind of Google and get those starting conversations and movement going.
My advice would be to start thinking about what you see as the workforce gaps in your communities, the energy workforce gaps and then communicating that what you see as those gaps to your state officials, and also kind of make sure that your state officials know that you want them to use this federal funding and maybe even provide additional state support for energy efficiency workforce development programs. And if there are existing training programs in your state or community that you've seen be successful, put those programs on your policymakers' radars so they know you're not starting from scratch, and there are community-driven efforts already underway that additional resources could help expand and amplify.
Want to call out Greg Monte's comment in the chat. We've talked a lot about partnerships today. We've talked about developing healthy workforce ecosystems. This has been a thread throughout our alliance discussions, right? Including at the Vision Summit in DC in October. You know, a lot of states have clean energy plans, energy efficiency plans, renewable plans. Take a look at those, and then, you know, if you are an entity like an IREC or some at the local or regional level, you reach out to those folks and you may find that they are also working on building partnerships. So, you know, Greg's suggesting the education and training providers, the governor's office, the state departments, community colleges. We have a shout out to NCWE, our co-convener. Community colleges are critical in this effort, and we just want to reflect on that. And again, similar to a lot of you folks, there are existing funding streams that can be repurposed in the community college setting for clean energy training programs, as long as you can support the need. Over to you, Jason.
Yeah, I would just add, consistent with what others have said, reach out, develop relationships, develop partnerships. If you don't know your state energy office, get to know it. If you don't know your governor's workforce board, get to know it. If you don't know joint labor management, registered apprenticeship programs, look for those relationships. I do think it's worth just noting here that beyond all of that, we're going to need more public workforce dollars, right? And so folks are going to have to think about how we can best be advocates for that at whatever level of governance, because there is just a big gap here, right, between the jobs that are going to be created and resources available for skilling people up to prepare them for those jobs. And so I think we got to keep that in mind.
Thank you. And
Yeah, I gotta say,
go ahead.
even though I'm community colleges, these lists you're seeing in the chat are for getting the community-based organizations. I'm talking about those organizations that provide emergency funds to families, that give them the diapers, that give them the extra pair of tires so that they can show up. They know the families. It can be through the social service organizations that do all those wraparound services, including food banks. We need to include those in our community partnership alliances, because they are an essential piece and they are also underfunded. So if we're going to make this whole system work, we have to include them. You know, there's this tendency, you go to community colleges and you think we do all of that. No, we only do parts of that, and we need our community-based organizations. Somebody asked about this March partnership meeting. It is hosted by the same group that's hosting today, the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance. If you're signed up for this, you will get the invitation and the notice to that.
Yeah. Thank you, Deb. And I have one more tough question that I'm not sure we can answer, but I want to raise this before we break here. And we do have some more resources, including the webinar dates, to share with you. So hang tight, guys. We got about 5 more minutes of programming. Amy with the National Community Action Partnership asked a very insightful and important question earlier about ensuring that our jobs working for low income programs like the WAP, the Weatherization Assistance Program, are also high quality. Obviously, the WAP and others have their hands tied by things like regulations around how much they can spend per unit, et cetera. But any reflections or brainstorms, understanding that we're not saying it's available, but how can we help either supplement or otherwise support those programs to ensure that they are providing family sustaining jobs in addition to the excellent comfort and health work they're doing in communities? Told you it was hard. I don't have the answer. I have ideas. I think we need, DOE and others need to look at pools of funding to help ensure the job quality there. We know there's a lot of money flowing to the WAP and other programs. And again, to Jason's point, some of that absolutely has to be focused on workforce and job quality. That's my 2 cents. That is LJ speaking, not the Alliance, not IREC or DOE.
I can't speak to wages for WAP installers, but I do think there's an opportunity to design the programs I mentioned, especially the $200 million residential contractor training program to meet the needs of WAP installers and help upskill folks in that industry so they can climb the career ladder within residential energy efficiency. I think that's a big part of job quality, but agree, the wage component is important too. I just don't have an answer on that front.
I do. Workers
it.
should collectively bargain with their employers and unionize.
There you go.
That's a longer conversation, not necessarily an easy one on this panel, but I'll just say it. Workers need to be able to organize and unionize and bargain.
I think I foresee a potential Alliance BGA co-webinar in the future, Jason. We'll follow up. Michelle, could you please share the slide deck, starting with our third to last slide. So slide 47, or no, sorry, slide 46. I try. For those who have not been with us throughout the year, this group has been convening for a year. That's a big deal. We've learned a lot. We've shared a lot about challenges. Even more importantly, we did share information about potential solutions and solutions that ought to be scaled. And that's some of the stuff we talked about today. We finally have a published, more comprehensive report. We've been sharing some tidbits with you throughout the year on the Alliance website, but in February, I don't have a set release date, but it is February. We are releasing a report out of all the solutions, including key recommendations that were sourced from all of you. This is your work. You are acknowledged in the publication. It will be an e-publication available online on the IREC website. We will share the publication date as soon as we have it. It's going to be in the next few weeks. And then next slide, please. February 28th, we have a webinar to introduce that report. If you've been with us all along, it's probably going to be review, but you can see how we have formulated the recommendations from you all. These are directed at folks like funders and program designers, but they're also for you. When you're sitting down and saying, okay, I'm going to go after DOE funding, I'm going to work with my state energy office, I'm going to join this community partnership to develop clean energy workforce in my community. Take a look at this. And then, if you're developing a program in accordance with one of the key recommendations, that's more ammunition. It's not just you, XYZ CBO or XYZ community college or person sitting in Maine. It's a national 500 organizations have said, this is important. We need you to pay attention and we need you to prioritize this so we can accelerate our efforts to support the just transition. And then Deb mentioned the March 29th webinar on partnership models. We want to make sure that we can scale the successful models. We want to make sure that folks understand what models work and what don't, which don't. How do we develop an effective workforce ecosystem? We talk about that a lot. What does it look like? Greg Monty started outlining some of it in the chat, but we'll dive a little bit into that more in March.
And if you're signed up for the Alliance, you will get the invitations to these events.
Yes.
So go to the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance, National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance, and you'll see there where you can sign up for the Alliance, because some of you have put into the chat, how do I get the information on this piece? Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Deb. So folks, I will drop the Alliance link if you happen not to be in our database. We would love you to sign up to receive our email updates so you don't have to wonder when the next webinar is. And I just dropped that in the chat. We have come to the end of our time. You folks have all been wonderful. A lot of you have hung with us the whole time. With immense gratitude to our panel and our co-conveners with NCWE. Just this has been such an amazing opportunity. Thank you so much for your time, and a big shout out to the crowd for all your time and attention and the great engagement. This is the best group to do a webinar for. I never feel like I'm alone in the room, and though I really am. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Any parting wisdom from our panelists, or should we let folks go about their day? All right. Thanks, folks. We'll see you next time. If not, we'll see you February 28th or sooner, we hope. Be well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all that all of you are doing to create a clean energy future for us all.
Thanks, Deb.
Indeed. Take care.
Bye.